there. You are watching DeProgram with Rall and Jamarl Thomas, but it's not the regular DeProgram. It's the extraneous one. It's the extra that happens on Mondays and Wednesdays at 12 noon instead of the regular show, which happens at 9 a.m. Eastern Time. Thanks so much for joining us. Please like, follow, and share. For those of you who are unfamiliar, the way this works is during the Q&A show, which is 12 noon to 1 p.m. Eastern, all you got to do is put in your questions, comments, insults, rebuttals, rebuffs, whatever you want to have to say, complaints about Robbie, all of that stuff goes into the live chat on Rumble and YouTube. We guarantee that we will answer all of the Rumble rants and the super chats because we're capitalist dogs and those pay us and we need that money desperately. But we will, because we are also, two of us are sort of semi-socialist, at least I'm totally socialist. We also will try our best efforts to get to all of the other unpaid questions and comments and complaints about Robbie. Robbie will sort through them all, feed them up to us, and off we will go to the races. Thank you. Let me see if there's an ad I need to deal with. No, doesn't look like it. I guess before we get to it, while people have a chance to post their questions and all, just for any further thoughts, guys, about and JT particularly about the the news out of Israel. I mean, the Israelis are definitely very, very, very upset over what's going on. So that to me is positive news.
Well, they're gonna blow up the ceasefire.
Positive news also. Like anytime they're upset, it's positive news to me. So
yeah,
I got a grain of salt. To me, that doesn't matter. Like what matters to me is, I will tell you flat out what matters to me. When Israel attacks Lebanon, which they've continued to do, despite the quote memorandum of understanding that supposedly they're going to sign on Friday, what does the U.S. do? I don't care about what Trump says. I don't care about the number of F-bombs Trump drops. What I care about is, do they turn to Israel and say, you're on your own? You are no longer getting money from us. You're no longer getting tens of billions of dollars from us. You're no longer getting political support in the United Nations or in the UN Security Council. You're no longer getting support from us. If you fight Iran, you're fighting them on your own. We're done. If the U.S. does that, I will come on and say, Ted, you're absolutely right. You nailed the shit. If they don't do that, and if they go with the, quote, Lebanon model, which is Israel attacks, the U.S. pretends that they haven't attacked Lebanon, and they turn the other cheek. And when Iran attacks, the U.S. flips out. If so, I'm just going to say, well, the U.S. is affecting its agenda under a ceasefire, which is what they've been doing from the beginning. So I consider this realism, or you can say cynicism, depending upon your point of view. But it's based firmly in what the U.S. has done all throughout. And this, look, let's be very honest right now. The attacks on Iran are mind-blowing because that's not something the U.S. has done up to this point. So the fact that we're in this kind of open hostility with Iran in the first place, this wouldn't happen if Syria hadn't failed, which should be a point to remember for the triumphalists who are calling this over with. I'm not calling you a triumphalist, Ted, but there are people who are triumphalists who are like, this is over, the U.S. lost, this is done, etc. Okay, those people need to firmly put Syria into their recollection because they were saying the same thing when the Syrians, the Russians, and Iranians rebuffed this kind of terrorist dogs of America taking over Syria the first time around. It took, 15 years? But the U.S. got what it wanted eventually because it didn't give up on its objective. I'm saying the same thing is true for Iran. The U.S. might have been pushed away now, but that doesn't mean they've given up on their objective. And Israel is firmly within the context of being used to accomplish that objective. It's not weird to me at all that Trump complains, oh my God, I can't believe Netanyahu is doing this. Oh, he's a fucking idiot. I can't believe he's doing this. While simultaneously let it happen. By the way, this is exactly what is happening in Ukraine, right? Oh my God, I can't believe Zelensky is doing this. Zelensky is a dictator, and blah, blah, blah. It doesn't stop the United States from giving them all the aid and comfort and assistance necessary to continue the war with the Russians, despite the fact that Trump is acting like a negotiator. I'm saying this tactic is being used in both cases. I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong.
I hope so too. We will see. Yeah. Well, I'm not going to repeat what I said this morning, but
no, you could be right, Ted. I mean, this could be a break in regards to, look, man, our economic system is taking a hit, and you guys are still fucking around. We need you to stop, even if it's temporary. We need you to stop. And Israel is telling U.S. to fuck off. That could totally be true.
This could also be this could also provide Trump or the U.S. government more broadly with an excuse to rupture a relationship that's not been working for them anymore. It could be simply a matter of saying, it's kind of like you're in a relationship with someone and you pick a fight with them, and you're like, and then if they take the bait and they tell you to fuck off and let's break up, you're like, oh, okay, if you feel that way, okay, yeah, we'll break up. I'm sorry, I was a bad boyfriend. Bye. And then you're like, yeah. So, Trump could be doing that, right? I mean, basically, it's interesting to me that he hasn't asked Israel, to withdraw from Lebanon entirely, but the Iranians don't appear to have insisted on that point. They just want the fighting to cease. That's kind of an odd thing. So we'll see. By the way,
why do you think it's odd?
Sorry?
Why do you think it's odd?
Well, it's odd because it's kind of like, it seems to me logically, if you're trying to protect and run interference for your ally in the axis of resistance, Hezbollah, it seems like you wouldn't want to leave the Israelis in place in Lebanese territory. You would say, you guys have to withdraw. Right, like it's really over. Like you have to withdraw, you have to stay withdrawn. So that part I don't quite get, but
it might be a power issue. Like, meaning we may be assuming that Iran has more power than what it does.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and if you're doing negotiate, let's be straight, right? The fact that Iran, this doesn't fall under my realist view of politics. It just doesn't. Like, states are cynical entities. They look out for their own self-interest above any and all things. Now, if Iran considers Lebanon to be, Hezbollah specifically, to be part of their core interests, then fair enough. I get it. But they have allowed southern Lebanon to take a full hit. They drew a line at Beirut. But the fact that they're adding them within the context of an agreement is pretty an amazing thing. I mean, they're effectively saying we're going to defend this other state even at risk for ourselves, which is pretty astonishing.
Yeah, it's cool, actually.
Yeah, it's I don't see it under normal circumstances. I don't see it.
Yeah, and also, like I said, they could have made demands relative to the West Bank settlers, or Gaza for that matter, and they haven't done that. So that
may be a power issue, meaning they may be like, okay, what can we credibly get?
Or what do we care about most? Or maybe they don't really care about Hamas as much as they care about Hezbollah.
I don't know. It could just be, what can we get out of these negotiations? Now, I agree with you from the maximalist point of view of saying, hey, we need you to leave, meaning the U.S. We need Israel to evacuate the areas that they've occupied. We need so-and-so. But maybe they just thought these aren't things that we could credibly get. But I agree with you that usually you put out maximalist demands and you whittle your way down to the things that you care about most.
Yeah.
Hezbollah seems to be on that very short list. But the question I think really does boil down to is, how much do they care about Hezbollah? And I strongly suspect that what the U.S. is going to try to do is to create a wedge between Lebanese interests and Iranian interests, using Israel as the tool to do it. We'll see. I don't want people to come with the assessment, though, that this is over. This is just the first skirmish.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's over. All right, let's do some questions, and if we have time, we have that leftover question that you asked me right before our last Q&A, which was
Robbie. Actually,
was it Robbie? I had an experience that I couldn't explain. All right, so all right, let's do these. All right. Darkworks88, thanks for the comment. Are you guys seeing Ted's increased engagements on Twitter translate to higher views on your main shows? It's too
Good
early to
question.
tell. Too early to tell. One thing that I've started doing, well, I won't get into the details of that, but one of the things I want to do is start cross-pollinating my Twitter posts that involve my cartoons to this show. And I'm wondering if that'll bring any traffic over. But the increased engagement on Twitter only really started a few weeks ago. And I know that's like, I guess I'll have to, that's almost like a Trent question. I'm having lunch with him on Thursday, and I'll ask him about that because he's like really good at looking at the YouTube analytics, but I don't know the answer to that question yet.
Okay.
John Park, has Israel always been this aggressive towards its Middle East neighbors? I'm only 29, so I don't know the track record. When I was in high school, I remember them always beefing with Jordan. The short answer is from day one, right?
Nakba.
So the establishment of the state of Israel was bound up in, basically it was like, we're creating the state, whether you guys like it or not. We know you don't like it. And then all the neighboring states invaded, right? So you could technically say that they were on the defensive there, but they were creating a state without negotiating with the locals, right? So
Right.
I would say that was an act of aggression. The 1967 war, Israel, in my recollection, they invaded Egypt and the other countries that they attacked preemptively. They thought that forces were massed on their border, and that those countries were thinking of invading. 1973 was certainly preemptive. Israel invaded Lebanon in the early 1980s, and they had their allied militia massacre people in refugee camps. Famously, what was his name? Sharon, right, was involved in that. Israel has been an attacky, bitey, aggressive invader of its neighbors, I think, throughout its entire history, as far as I can say. They have really rarely, there have been certainly there have been periods where they weren't attacking anyone, and they were just consolidating their gains and their power. But there's never been a period where they seem to really, truly be like, we're satisfied with what we've got, and this is what we've got, is what we have, and that's it.
Yeah, they don't even identify their borders. And keep in mind, the day that Israel celebrates as their creation date is like the Nakba for the people who are there, because they started off with the genocide. In fact, you could ask, if you look at some of the old videos of the Israelis talking about what they did in order to create the state, they're talking about wanton murder and killing. Like, they chased out hundreds. What was it?
I think 200,000 would be
From their homes and from their area. Not to mention, this include killing, obviously rapes, decimation, pushing people out of their homeland. They called it a Nakba for a reason, and I think it's not a coincidence that one side celebrates it as the creation of the state, and the other side celebrates it as being stateless. They've always been that way. What are Israeli borders? You tell me.
Yeah, and even the rhetoric is so genocidal. For example, they refuse to call it the West Bank or the occupied territory. They call it Judea and Samaria, the ancient terms for that area. And they're kind of like, well, this was ours, right? Although Samaria, I don't know. It's like there was a kingdom of Israel, but that was a long, long time ago, and it's crazy. But okay. Thanks for the $5, Frank Field 7254. So this deal is pretty much bullshit. The Western tyrants won't unless we stop them. What do you guys think? I don't
agree.
think the deal is.
Well, you think it's bullshit, but go ahead, explain.
I don't think the deal is bullshit. I think it represents a severing of interests. Israel and the United States did not have a common interest or common war aims when they attacked Iran. For Israel, the attack was just one more kind of what they call horribly and terribly mowing the lawn, right? Like, basically, we just degrade our enemies and our rivals' military and civilian infrastructure and kill a bunch of them every so often, just to keep them off balance and keep them broke and destitute. And we just keep doing that. Rinse, lather, repeat. Although I think it's actually lather, rinse, repeat, as was pointed out to me the other day. that's all they're going to do. But whereas the United States Trump was hoping for something like Venezuela, total regime change, democratization, turn Iran into a U.S. vassal state / ally. They were not the same goals. Trump's goal was not achievable. He was kind of hoping for a putsch, like, the Iranian people will rise up and overthrow their government somehow amidst a hail of Israeli bombs. Not likely. And so I think now with this deal, Trump knows that nothing is to be gained, and there could be more losses. Therefore, this is about cutting his losses. It's smart. He's making the right move, albeit belatedly. Israel's on a different page. They're trying to create, as you say, greater Israel. And so the question is, will Israel push and decide to go for it anyway? And if so, probably, I would say probably. And then the U.S. is then they have to decide, are we chumps? Are we Israel's chumps again, once again, for the millionth time? Or do we finally say enough is enough? The tail does not wag the dog. We have the chokehold. We decide. I think they've gamed it out this much, and they think that it's not 3D chess. It's barely 1D chess. I think it's just super easy to see. It's so easy, so easy a cartoonist can see it. I think it's like, this is it. This is where we are.
I don't want to call it bullshit, because that's, I think, too strong. And I agree with you, Ted, to a degree. Up until the point, I do agree that Trump's and Israeli interests diverge, because Trump has to pay attention to the American economy. And the fact that he continuously lied about a deal being on the table, on some level, gets across the pressure that he was under in order to try to get something to open it straight up. Right, because it was causing economic damage.
Stock market's way up today.
Right. That's what I mean. Like, these are things that are beneficial from the standpoint of Trump. These are items that he considers to be positives. So, yeah, there's a pressure on him to do so. But that doesn't mean...
Man, Israel is so unpopular now in the United States. I mean...
True, but U.S. policy... But let me ask you this. Do you think U.S. policy has changed?
Is there anything back, though? But only like 30% of Americans support Israel now. Is there can you imagine, JT, any world in which Israel somehow becomes less unpopular in the foreseeable future? I don't see how. I don't see what they could do. I think they could withdraw all their troops from all the places they've invaded, apologize for the genocide, and it still would be too late. There's nothing they can do at this point.
But that's part of the plan. Like, meaning this idea of it's not us, don't blame us, blame Israel, was always part of the plan. That was always baked into it. Meaning the U.S. effectively claiming that Israel is a rogue actor as opposed to under the U.S. control. That's always part of the plan, which Path to Persia points us out very clearly.
But the U.S.
want to blame Israel.
Israel's no longer useful to us. It's a net loss, right?
You think so?
What can they do for us going forward?
Well, expand in their military escapades in the Middle East is a benefit to the United States. It creates chaos in that region. It prevents those countries from ever consolidating in any kind of real sense of the term. Not to mention the Gulf states.
That's the strongest counterpoint, I would say.
And let me ask you this. Do you think U.S. policy in the Middle East has changed?
I think it's about to.
You think the U.S. is going to stop and roll its forces back?
I wouldn't go. I would say that we are at a point where they have to stop. They have to start thinking about it. Let's put it that way. Look, the policy of encirclement, as you've pointed out, Jamarl, has been counterproductive. They thought they were encircling Iran. All they were doing was giving Iran a shooting gallery, right next door. It's like, we don't need long range missiles. You guys are right at our border.
Right.
We'll kill you. We'll blow you up right on your bases in Qatar. Thank you. You've got to be rethinking that. This is not working.
I don't think so. Keep in mind, from the standpoint of the United States, it has not given up on this idea of hegemony. Getting and get rid of Iran is instrumental into going after Russia and going after China. Going after Russia is instrumental in going after China. Iran is one of the first bricks that need to go. They have been working on this plan to go after Iran for 20-something years. I don't buy that after the first failure, they give it up. I would, as a hegemon. I would just find another way to do it.
All right, let's keep going here. Crone of Anarchy. I asked this before and I missed it if it was answered, but which way do you get more money on Rumble other than the wallet? The tip jar, the $sign, or the gift box? This is a Robbie question. Robbie.
Yeah, so with Rumble rants, Rumble, just like YouTube, takes 40% of whatever it's going to be. It's like, say, if you donate $100, then Rumble and YouTube are going to take 40% of that. The only way that a creator gets 100% of the donation is either A, through Rumble Wallet, then you get everything, then the creator gets everything, or by becoming a channel subscriber over on Rumble for $5 a month. Then the show gets 100% of that. Now, the flip side of that is $5. So if you want to donate more than that, then you can't. It just depends on on what you want to do, and that's where the PayPal kind of comes in. PayPal takes a cut too, but it's not 40% like what YouTube and Rumble take.
Oh, I think it's 1.5.
Yeah, it's a lot cheaper.
Okay. Thank you very much, Robbie. Okay. Govman43, thanks for the $5. Do you think Russia can sustain this glacial pace of advance and these losses without doing full mobilization?
Yes. Yes. I mean, from the Russian point of view, I don't think they're losing as many people as I think the West claims. There's that. Yeah. I think the pace at which they're losing people has gone down, has gone up. Whereas the same thing, I don't think is true for the Ukrainians. 3, they are enacting a strategy. I mean, and again, a lot of us in the West want them to be more aggressive, myself included, if I'm being honest in that. And polling took from the Russian population, wanted them to be far more aggressive. But Putin is enacting a strategy that he believes would ultimately win when they took Donbass by the end of the year. And at that point, the question is going to be, all right, we've accomplished our military objectives in regards to the Donbass region. What do you want to do? Do you want to keep this war going? The West is going to say yes, because they don't really care about the Ukrainians. They're using them as cannon fodder for them to build up their time for their own militaries. So they don't really care. So their answer is going to be yes. We're going to keep this thing going, because the entire point was go after the Russians, in which case, well, there are no more defensive lines, not any real ones. And so the pace, by definition, will quicken. Look, from my point of view, Putin is chasing safety. And what he doesn't want is to create this trigger in the West where they get more militarily involved in it. He's done everything in his power to isolate it to Ukraine. I don't think that's going to ultimately work, but he's been doing everything in his power to keep it isolated. Do I think he's going to continue with this? Yes.
Yeah, no, I think, very clearly now this has been going on for over 4 years.
5 years.
4 or 5 years, yeah. 5 years. So, yeah, I think the Russians can and will keep this. 4 years. The Russians will keep this going. I mean, they seem to be doing okay. It's like, they're certainly not, it's so funny, right? Like, the way these numbers of casualties are manipulated, like, the Russians have lost millions of men in Ukraine. No, they haven't. Iran killed 40,000 demonstrators. No, they didn't. It's just, people have died for sure, and it's too many, but it's not the kind of numbers that they're saying. Anomendarek. Did any of you read the books The Host and the Parasite or Big Israel?
No.
I have not, and I'm not familiar.
The Host and the Parasite.
It's Greg Felton is apparently the author of The Host and the Parasite.
That's probably an argument for the tail wagging the dog, I suppose.
Yeah, I think that's right. According to the Amazon listing. I got to say, however, I'm not buying this book anytime soon. It's $558.
What?
And
Are you serious?
And it might be excellent, but it's not worth $500. Nope, I've never paid $558 for a book.
I don't know what could be in that book that could be worth that much. Like that,
If it doubled the
unless
size
you're
of my penis, I might think about it, but I don't know.
unless they're telling me that there's an alien base somewhere that I can go and see the aliens in that bit, there's nothing that you can tell me in that book, right?
Not
But
with
there's
the
a little bit of information.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. Okay. Frank Friel, Trump is compromised by the Epstein files. True. HCS 246, your problem is that your political elites are not in step with ordinary people's views. Unless you have a political revolution, I don't see anything changing in the USA.
True. Very true.
True.
But
Totally.
that's a mechanical issue, I think. Like,
Yeah.
meaning, I don't believe that people are these overtly imaginary things that are somehow different than physical processes. I think they will keep a certain point of view until that point of view no longer can function, which means that it will require an overturn of the way we go about our normal affairs before any of this shit changes. It's just a question of will the public at some point realize, hey, we're run by pedophiles, or at the very least, people who defend pedophiles, who are radically corrupt. And despite explaining to you why you need austerity, they take and take and take from you. Until the public really gets that on a flesh to bone level, this shit just remains.
Totally. Let's see. Okay, thank you very much, Shores 444 for the $4.99 donation. I don't know why YouTube rounds down like from $4.99 to $4. That's like
Do they?
Yeah, they do. It's like what's up with you guys? Anyway, y'all were right about AOC. Can't denounce Israel when asked about if an ally country spies on their counterparts. It's certainly aggressive, she said.
Yeah, it's more than aggressive. AOC, before she got into the political space, was far more aggressive towards the state of Israel. She would tell you exactly what she thought. And the moment she got into the political space, all of a sudden, she can't seem to get her words out.
Because someone's paying her a very handsome salary and campaign contributions and book tours and all expense paid trips to go see the Judean hills. Let's be honest here. This is the Ted. I hate to tell you, brother, but the tail's going to wag this dog all the way to New York City. It's not going to stop. It's not going to stop.
I don't believe that.
I don't think that. I mean, it's like, look, Israel is the welfare state. Israel needs U.S. It was created by the United States. It's been kept in power by the United States. It's been financed by the United States. It doesn't really have, by the way, this very robust economy with like low unemployment and high wages. That's not really true. It's a
many people. Yeah, it's a welfare state. It's a welfare state.
They use our money to bribe our politicians to enhance their standard of living at the expense of our own. That's True. What this is. I mean, they don't have to be good for the country. This has to be good for the politicians who run it. That's the distinction. Yeah, that's what you're missing. And talking about public opinion. It's like universal health care is incredibly popular here in the United States. If we were governed by popular opinion, we'd have it. We don't have it because people's opinion don't matter.
But I'm not going to. Here's the thing. I'd be the first to say popular opinion is routinely ignored, and healthcare is an example of that. And most people want third parties, for example, right? But like when popular opinion tilts to a certain level, where the combination of a very high number of people feels a certain way, and this part's very important, and they care about that issue a lot, like it's on their number 1, 2, or 3 most important issue, then the politicians get to a point where some of them start to peel away because they realize they can't ignore that anymore. And all I'm arguing is, so public opinion doesn't matter as much as it ought to, but it doesn't not matter at all. I mean, even Adolf Hitler cared about public opinion. He hired spies to go to bars and cafes and report back what were ordinary Germans talking about. And so, I mean, you can't stay in power if you have no care for public opinion at all. I mean, the system ought to have a lot more consideration for it, but not none.
Politicians wouldn't lie if they didn't care about public opinion.
Yeah.
They just wouldn't. I mean, the reason that Goebbels existed, the reason that Stephen Miller exists, the reason that Rubio, that any of these people exists, is to, on some level, influence and affect public behavior and opinion by continuously putting out lies in order to justify whatever behavior that they're taking. Otherwise, they wouldn't care to do it. They'd just come out and be like, yeah, we're taking the oil, we're taking down the government, and we're doing so for hashtag reasons.
Younger people complain, but they don't vote. Boomers, they vote overwhelmingly more than what younger people do. So if the younger people don't turn up to vote, and all they do is get on Facebook and X and TikTok and complain, then what incentive does the ruling class have to listen to them? None at all. Instead, because younger people believe that does not matter, because the institutions are broken. By the way, I agree with them. I think our elections are they're a complete scam.
Yeah.
You always get John McCain. It doesn't matter who you vote for. You always get John McCain. And so I think that's what this is.
Normally, I guess my point is like, okay, so that's an example, right? Normally, the American people are okay with the neocons running both political parties and therefore running foreign policy forever and ever. Right now is not normally. The American people are finally paying attention to Israel and Gaza, and they don't like what they see. That's a development.
Then why did Thomas Massey lose? Because that is the canary in the coal mine. What you're saying on paper makes sense. The facts, though, speak otherwise. Now, you can say that there are some shenanigans with mail-in voting. I don't know if there was or not. I mean, to me, the numbers look weird, but I'm not there. What you can say is that he ran staunchly against Israel. You can say the same thing about Fishback in Florida. If Fishback wins, Ted, that makes your case. The fact is, though, is that the Republican establishment is not going to allow this man to win. Neither will the Democrats. They will work together.
Lose some, right? I mean, you're pointing to a quantum singularity, like one district in Northwest Kentucky. I mean, you know, and who knows, by the way, how well he took care of his constituents and whatnot. There's, you know, with those kind of local considerations that are often, not understood by the national media, right? And I don't know the answer at all. He might have been great that way, but what I do know is that, there have now been candidates who have been successful with an anti-Zionist message.
Which one?
I mean, in several races. I'd have to look it up. But
Mamdani is one.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
Mamdani's he's a complete cuck. He's not going to do anything.
Look, I'm not saying.
But Mamdani, that's why you got the mayor of New York.
But New York. There's a few Jews. There's a few Jews in New York. There's some Zionists here.
The Jewish capital of the United States is New York, and I would argue that he won in New York.
More Jews live in New York City than live in any other community in the world except for Israel.
And by the way, many of the candidates that was on that stage were staunch pro-Israel and went after him when he would make statements basically saying, "I'm not going to Israel. I'm still in my district." And he went that route and won in that route. You can say he's a cuck on other issues, but on another issue, he actually stood strong. And by the way, I don't disagree with you with Massey. The only part of the disagreement I would have is they dumped millions into that race. That was the most expensive race in the world, and that was because of the money they dumped into it. Left to his own devices, Massey would have won that race.
Oh, 100%. Okay, Graham Plattner. He, in Maine. He trounced in the Democratic primary.
Did you Fetterman, that fat fuck, talking about Plattner and bashing the guy? You're talking about an Israeli cuck. Fetterman is your guy. That asshole. I even talked to that asshole before he won his first race.
Yeah. Now, here's the thing. I'm a right winger. I would have voted for Mamdani. I don't agree with that man on anything. And I would have voted for him because he's the only one on that stage that I'm not going to go to a foreign country. I'm here to represent New York. Right. The thing is, though, is that he is the mayor of a city. Sure, I guess it's an important city, at least for marginally. If you overlook the rats and the homeless and just the city imploding.
Only the capital of finance and news media and culture.
Yes.
Just those things.
Yep, but he doesn't have any kind of foreign policy. Like, there's nothing he's able to do. Like, he doesn't write a check to Israel. I'm sure he's going to be cashing some, but he doesn't write them. He can't even get his people to stop burning down school buses. So, I mean, let's be honest here. These two things are not the same.
Well, I respectfully disagree with you on that. All right, let's keep going here. All right, Government 43, thanks for the $10. A follow-up. Couldn't this have been settled without a war? Well, yeah.
No.
The West never attacked the Soviet Union, or what's WP? I don't know.
Because they couldn't.
There's spying. There is spying, election tampering, sabotage by both sides. But does that justify invasion? It's a new precedent.
WP is Warsaw Pact.
Dude, the issue is that Iran exists. That is the issue. You breathe air. We don't like that you breathe air. It's that. Yeah. Meaning there was always going to be a war. Going from the very beginning when they went after Iran, when they went after Iraq, Iran was always on the marquee. John talks about this, by the way, John Kiriakou, where he talks about being in the room and Dick Cheney comes in and says, and in X number of weeks, we'll be in Iran. They were trying to take down the entirety of the Middle East. And by the way, they did.
From day one, right? Like we told our dog Saddam to invade Iran, and he did in 1980.
Yeah. The issue was that Iran existed. So if you're asking, it was a war necessary to settle it. Not from the Iranian point of view. Iran didn't want to be bothered. They kept saying, leave us alone, leave us alone, leave us alone. And over again, even with the true promise, all that stuff was theatrical. And from our point of view, they're doing that because they're weak.
Government,
there was never a way to settle this without a war.
Sorry. Government 43, another $3 donation. Thank you again. Warsaw Pact was all up on Western Europe's borders. They never invaded over it. I don't think the EU and NATO should have expanded, but is it an invadable offense? Now Finland is in NATO over this war.
The reason that they didn't invade is because it would have been the end of all things.
Mm-hmm. It was World War. Yeah, it would have been
World War III. Iran doesn't have nukes. Iran is open to attack because they can't do anything to America or anybody else. It took leverage with the Strait of Hormuz in order for the U.S. to even back away for a moment and be like, holy shit, maybe we need to deal with this. Yes, you need to deal with this. This was their way of keeping us off of them. North Korea, same thing. They got nukes. We leave them to their devices. We leave countries to their devices when they have the capability of damaging us. It's just that. So the question presupposes that negotiation is the thing that solves things. It doesn't. Force, power, leverage. Those are the things.
Or the credible threat of force.
Or credible threat. That's it. That's your world. I know that's uncomfortable for some people to reconcile, but that is the world that you live in. It's the law of the jungle.
That is
how they talk about it matters less.
It's true. It's true. Okay, Boggy 708. How does Ted feel about the riots in Belfast? I mean, I think that we can either of us answer that. I'm torn. Mainly, I'm dismayed because I don't like to see right-wing goons, going door to door,
rampaging.
Yeah, rampaging and killing and harming people, beating people up simply because they're foreigners and trying to throw them out. On the other hand, I always like to see things getting spicy when working class people are being mistreated and underemployed and unemployed, and the ruling class doesn't care. So that's good. I wish, again, like we were talking about this morning, I wish they were going after the bankers instead, but they're not. So overall, anti, but it's to be followed with great interest, but I really feel badly for the victims.
Yeah, it sucks. It's right-wing, it's the Nigel Farages of the world, the Tommy Robinsons of the world. And it's sad because you're right. You would think that their thought is we're being fucked over by the government. Their response is we're being fucked over by immigrants. And it's like, dude, they are in the same box that you're in. All of you have the same interests and priorities. But that's not the way it ever comes out, even in the States. That's how Trump got elected, right? Oh, it's the immigrants. It's the immigrants. They're taking your jobs. They're taking your jobs. Some of that's true, which is part and parcel to the reason why I think you pointed out them being maligned by the state is a real issue. I just wish it didn't. I wish they focused on where it needed to be focused. I'll put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Government says, I was, and thanks for the twofer. I was talking about the Russia-Ukraine, not Iran, LOL, but that's okay. All right, good show. All right. Anomandarake, which I'm sure, if there's a proper pronunciation, I'm getting wrong. 21st Century Wire did some reporting on Israel trying to rig elections all over Europe. French even caught some ops. Oh, I believe that.
Yeah, so do I. I mean, they haven't showed him restraint in anything else. Why wouldn't they show restraint on this? It's lawless. It's a rogue state. It's a rogue actor on the same standpoint of the world. I don't see why that would be shocking.
They've been operating with a blank U.S. check forever. It's like,
Exactly.
we do whatever we want. Big Daddy always covers us.
Yep.
No,
Yeah, they function with impunity.
Yeah. All right. Well, if you guys want, I'm ready to tell my story.
Yes, I want to hear it.
Okay. So here's my story. All right. So the question was, and you guys both shared some incidents that occurred to you that you can't explain, whether it be supernatural or whatever. So, all right, here's mine. So I used to live on Tiemann Place, which is basically 124th Street. The geography is important. 124th Street and Broadway on the Upper West Side of Manhattan, just north of Columbia University. I had a day job, and my routine back then, I was much younger. I would come home from work, crash, and then get up and draw cartoons until the wee hours, and trying to launch my cartooning career. So, while I was napping one evening, I had, how sometimes you have an exceptionally vivid dream, like where it's like disturbingly so, like it's really detailed, and it's like you feel like you're there. And it's also like there's nothing wrong about the dream. There's nothing like, oh, wait, my mom she never used to talk like this, but she's talking like this. There's nothing like that. So I had this vivid dream of being in an airplane crash where the airplane was in water, landed in water, and was about halfway full of water. But also things are on fire. People are screaming. And it's just like, panic. And basically you've landed in water somehow and it's on fire. And I was so convinced that something was going on that I turned on the radio. I got up to draw cartoons. I was like, I wonder if something really happened. Now, for the record, I have never once done that after a dream, right? Ever thought I saw something real. So I get on, I'm drawing, I turn on the radio, an hour goes by, there's no report, it's just normal programming. And I start to think well, there's, obviously it's just a dream. And about an hour and a half later, they announced that there had just been a plane crash at LaGuardia Airport. A U.S. airplane had slid off the runway and gone into the East River. It was half submerged. There was a fire. About half the people on board died. The other half made it. And the thing is, as the crow flies, that's about 3-4 miles away from where I lived. So there's a geographical proximity there. It's directly across 125th Street. You just basically, if you know New York City, if you just drive, I was on the far west side of 125th, if you go straight across Harlem to the east side, you run into the bridge that takes you to LaGuardia. And I was just so I'm convinced I saw it. I had a vision,
I'm convinced you did also. So it depends on how you look at it. It's a synchronicity.
Mm-hmm.
People, big events have a tendency to, remote viewing. One of the things that tends to come up are big events tends to have a splash that when people are looking, let's say, out at stuff, the event often factors into their viewing, whether it is, the accident or otherwise. People also have this faculty where they can recount things or bring up things when they're in a state that they're open to it. Mm-hmm. The fact that thing was going on pretty much that close to you within that time span is probably one of the things that drew your mind to it. And by the way, anybody can remote view. This is not something that is, oh, only 3 or 4 people in the world. Anybody can do it. I've seen my ex-girlfriend do it who didn't even believe in it, and she nailed the shit on the very first go. Yeah, it was a synchronicity. I think you did see it in advance.
No, I agree.
Yeah, I don't take issue with the belief set
Yeah. I
at
mean,
all. You'd be
yeah.
surprised at some of the shit that people have viewed remote in a remote viewing sense, and even stuff that have come up while they were remote viewing that ended up being a big, oh God, what was that plane crash? They told the guy to remote view the headline for the very next day, and there was this huge plane crash that he remote viewed, and then he get dinged for it because it wasn't in the papers or something like that. It was like, well, dude, that wasn't in the paper, so you didn't necessarily nail it. It's like, are you fucking kidding me? This thing is big fucking deal that this plane was shot down. No, I think you're right, Ted.
Or was it the TWA that got shot down?
Was that it? I need to look it back up. But there have been a few cases where people have remote viewed stuff that ended up splashing. 9/11. I think it was 9/11, if I'm not mistaken.
Gotcha.
No. 9/11 was in the papers, obviously. It couldn't have been 9/11. I forget which one it is. My point is, most likely, it's true that you did pick up on it. And that was your interpretation of it in your dream state.
I mean, yeah,
Amazing.
to me, it's the fact that it was so vivid that I felt compelled to turn on the radio and listen. I was convinced, before I heard anything. And I started to think like, no, false alarm,
No,
but
I think you hit it. I think you
Yeah.
nailed it.
Sean Lewis, JT says, for the next members only video, you should teach people how to remote view.
I like
That
it.
would be interesting. The remote viewing program that the U.S., the CIA has declassified those files. And so you could see many of the cases that they were effectively doing. Joe McMoneagle remote viewing the Iranian negotiations that were taking place to give the U.S. the idea of how many people there were there, who was there, that type of stuff to give intel. Also, remote viewing is different than psychic work. Remote viewing requires you to know the end result. So say, for example, you give me 4 numbers or 6 numbers. You have a file that those numbers are on. The numbers are random. They could be anything. And inside the folder, you have the target that you want to remote view. It could be anything in existence. Pick and choose whatever you want it to be. And you give me the numbers. And I, only having the numbers, need to tell you about the thing that you're asking about in that envelope. And yeah, I mean, anybody can do it. But the rub is you need to have information on the envelope, like what's in it. So it can't just be remote viewing things that you don't have intel about, that you can't corroborate. Remote viewing requires cooperation at the very end so you to know whether you hit it or whether you didn't hit it. It's not this random stuff of, well, I think so and so and so and so. And then at the end of it, it could be anything. The UFO targets are interesting targets because some people would argue that's not really remote viewing. Because when you get intel about the craft, there's no way to validate the intel that you got about the craft. You can only validate the competence of the viewer that's doing it. There's a difference in those things. Like, for example, one of the things that I had was I got the numbers from this thing called Code Monkey that used Target Monkey, I think, that used to be online where they would give you numbers, you remote view it, and then after it, they would tell you what the target was so you can validate your information about whether you got it right, whether you got it wrong, how much you got right, how much you got wrong. And I remember I had been doing this for a while. I had done multiple targets. And the target ended up being Chernobyl. I thought it was a war zone because I was seeing people dying. I remember I had this thought in my head, I'd never see my wife and kids again, that I wrote down. It was all sorts of weird shit. And for me, I had the AOL, this aesthetic overlay of my consciousness telling me, it's a war, it's a war, it's a war. That's hard because you have to ignore the fact that your conscious mind is telling you it's a war because your conscious mind doesn't have any information, right? Your conscious mind is reaching in the darkness. And any little bit of information that comes to you from the standpoint of a signal versus noise, your conscious mind jumps on is like, it's a war, it's a war, it's a war. And you have to write down, okay, I'm getting an idea of a war. And I'm trying to ignore that. At that point, I think I had to end the session because I couldn't necessarily get past the idea of it being a war. It was Chernobyl. But there are people who are far better at it than I am who would have nailed that shit. My brain is just slightly off and recording it. It's fascinating. My point, Ted, my point in saying all of this is that your mind latched onto something that was a tragedy that was nearby, that gave you this almost like, there's a word for it when remote viewers go to a particular target and they can't distinguish their reality from the target reality. There's a word for it. I can't think of the name for it, but it sounds like that.
Mhm.
It sounds like you nailed the target, even though you weren't looking for a target.
No, I certainly was not. Yes, it was an accidental thing. Okay, so Sean Lewis, apologies if it's been mentioned. Just got here. Did you guys catch the UFC fight card at the White House?
I did not.
No.
Well,
But
what?
somebody got kicked out, right, for being pro-Palestine.
Oh, is that true?
I thought it was. I thought one of the
I
fighters was
I
escorted
do
out.
want to. I definitely want to. I definitely want to dig into it and find out exactly what happened. All I saw was a bunch of triumphalist, Twitter posts this morning talking about like it was so cool, it was so kick-ass, it was so America, it really owned the left. Like, okay, you guys did your thing, whatever. I mean, so it's interesting, right? Why did none of us feel compelled to watch it? I will be honest. For me, part of it is it was late at night. I'm like, I'm not going to watch it. I don't know if I'm like the only American, but I feel like post COVID, I don't want to stay up until 11 o'clock at night and watch anything on
I
live
said
TV.
post-COVID.
Well, because like post COVID, like during COVID, people started going to sleep at an earlier hour.
Really? Why?
It's just people. I mean, like people started, like for example, in New York, 8 o'clock used to be the standard meet someone for dinner time. Maybe
Huh.
7 if you're on the early
Oh,
side.
I see.
Now it's like 5 o'clock is the new 7 o'clock. 6 o'clock is the new 8 o'clock. Restaurants that routinely, standard for a New York restaurant to be, for the kitchen to stay open till 11 or midnight. Yeah, maybe it's 9 or 10 now. Everything just closes earlier. Everything, we're a sleepier, less late night country after post COVID.
I will say, when I was in France, one of the best times that we had, there were two great moments that stand in my mind. One was eating at the coffee shop where it was like a croque monsieur and a cappuccino under the Eiffel Tower. That just felt iconic. In fact, we even had a postcard of the exact same spot that we were sitting as we were doing the thing. The other one was a late night restaurant, and I think we stayed there till like 1 or 2 in the morning, just eating, drinking. People were smoking.
Oh
It was
yeah,
just fantastic. Oh, it's just those moments are.
I
Yeah,
think even Europe's gotten to be not quite as crazy late as it used to be, though.
yeah.
Um, yeah. So yeah, I just think it's interesting that none of us felt compelled to watch it.
Well, I didn't feel compelled to watch it because I thought it was silly. I thought, it's not that I hate the UFC. I'm fine with the UFC. It just felt strange. It felt like idiocracy.
It's a
Totally.
gimmick. It's a gimmick. I mean,
It's also kind of embarrassing in a cringy kind of way. Like I'm a little ashamed of my country that happened last night.
I mean,
Yeah, you have these muscular men who are beating the shit out of each other with the president hailing like this is somehow a macho America or something. I don't know. I thought it was silly. I'm sorry, Robbie.
it's very Roman. I mean, no, you have the Colosseum right there in the heart of Rome. You have gladiators out there fighting each other, and
Yes.
then Trump. I mean, no, listen, I get that's the old cliche. The late stage republic has become the empire, just like what Rome did. Well, let's just let's just follow this thing through. Uh,
Yep.
Rome back in the day was a giant slum. New York and Washington D.C. is a slum. Now Trump wants to build his triumphal arch, and he can't have a Colosseum, so he builds one on the south lawn of the White House. It's the same thing. It's just it's all
It's bread and circuses for sure.
it's
Well, if this
pathetic.
circus is no bread.
Yeah,
No
there's no
bread.
bread. There's no bread to be had.
It's
Yeah.
just circus.
Bread would be good.
Yeah, this is just a circus. Robbie, damn good point. Damn
Dark
good point.
Horse, the immigrants should be everywhere, saying that they have a common enemy. Governments destroyed their homes and drove them to be immigrants. Help us fix this, and we will go home.
You can go home regardless.
Can't have it both ways, though.
Sure. Oh, I completely agree. And listen, I'm probably the outlier here. The riots need to happen. I'm going to take a page out of Ted's book here. One of the reasons why the left back in the 60s was so effective in as protests, especially against the Vietnam War, is because there was a credible threat of violence. You had the Black Panthers, you had the Weather Underground. I mean, there was a real thing. You've had people like me talking about immigration now for 30 years, maybe longer, politely asking, "Hey, can we please do something about this? Could you please stop? Could you rein it back just a little bit?" And then what? No, then just fast forward happens in England. You had the grooming scandal that happened in Northern England. So shut up, Whitey. You don't talk about that. No, you're being racist. And you talk about, well, the majority of jobs are going to H-1B visa holders who are coming in. Check the numbers. More than half of new jobs being filled in the UK are going to immigrants. The domestic population is getting left behind.
Wow.
You have the domestic population say, "Hey, can we do something about this? Like, can we at least get a job? Maybe have a house? Can we live in our own country?" And then the government says, "No, Whitey, sit down and shut up." And then you get this scumsucker from Africa who goes and tries to behead a dude on the streets of a major Irish city. Maybe it's time to stop asking.
Wait.
Maybe it's time to take a page out of the left's handbook and start making a ruckus.
I thought he was Irish.
Yeah, well, the guy who tried to behead him wasn't. The guy who was I want to say he was from Somalia. I could be wrong. I want to say he was a Somali immigrant, if I remember correctly. He tried to behead an Irish guy. He ended up losing an eye, and the only reason he wasn't able to cut the guy's head off is because other people, unlike here in the United States, they put their phones down and actually went in there to help. And so maybe it's time to stop asking nicely. And I hope that we start seeing more of this stuff spread.
The suspect is Sudanese.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, there comes a time, and listen, I get how this is going to sound. It's going to sound bad. It's going to sound crazy. But half the population of the city of Cardiff is immigrant. If that was happening in Nairobi, it'd be called colonization. It would be denounced. And it would be called every kind of thing that you possibly could call it. But if it's happening in Europe, it's cultural enrichment, it's diversity. You should celebrate your job going to a migrant. It's a good thing. It's the double standard. If everyone was able to work, and if everyone was able to have a family, and if everyone had a say, you would not be having these issues. The problem is that that's not the reality. The reality does not match the facts on the ground. And there comes a point where if your government is going to continue importing massive amounts of other people at the detriment of the domestic population, and if it says in response, "Shut up, racist," there comes a point where people are going to have enough. And what's really going to be interesting is if these riots continue, what's going to happen if the British military is called up to put these riots down? Will they do it?
Well,
would the military use force against their fellow citizens?
Sure.
In violation of immigration law to protect people who have no right to be there in the first place.
Well, if that happens, law and order, they would. Yeah, sure they would.
If that happens, then the British state forfeits all right to exist.
By the way, I will tell you that in any political contests, pushing the military to kill civilians is often the objective.
Mm-hmm.
No.
And I know people think, "Oh my God, I can't believe you're saying that." It's true. When you think of Tiananmen Square,
mm-hmm.
where it's widely believed that was a CIA operation, this kind of color revolution, what was the objective? Get the state to kill civilians. The woman who was running the protest even said as much, that the goal was some people, blood needs to be on the streets.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with the Ukraine thing, right? In the color revolution, when the Maidan coup took place, you had snipers on the roof killing protesters, which caused a push against the state. Same thing with the Georgia government. They wanted the government to kill protesters in order to delegitimize the state. The same thing would be true if there was a push on the British government, and for that matter, even in America. Does the military kill civilians? Whew. That's when shit gets real.
Their own civilians. Their own people. I mean, think about this.
That's when shit gets real.
The British government was more outraged by people committing so-called hate speech violations than they were about migrants who were grooming local girls. That should tell you all that you need to know about your government. And our own government is no better. We're ran by the Epstein class. We're just as bad. We're just closer. I mean, they're just closer. They've been dealing with it longer. I hope that these riots go on. I hope that they spread, and not because I want just anarchy. That's the last thing I want. I want the governments of these nations to start listening to their people, their legitimate grievances, and start taking them seriously.
That part's very hard to argue with. Horses are people too. Thanks for the $2. If the UK, and we got to take this and one more comment, and we got to call it a show. If the UK military moves in on Northern Ireland again, it'll be the Troubles all over again, guaranteed. I agree with that. Although, ironically, because the Troubles was really caused by Catholics trying to get independence from Britain. In this case, it's the Protestants. It's the Ulster, Protestant militants who were the leading force here originally before they spread into Britain and Scotland. And Peter Ive, I forgot it was on the cage match, so I didn't have to make the choice. Thanks for the $2. All right, obviously that topic, if the riots continue, we will continue to cover it. Anyway, I think we should leave that there if you guys are okay with it.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay, so thanks everyone for tuning in. You've been watching the Q&A episode of DeProgram with Rall and Jamarl Thomas. Regular DeProgram back tomorrow, Tuesday, 9 a.m. Eastern Time. Thanks, Jamarl. Thanks, Robbie. Thanks, everyone, for watching. And, of course, thanks very much for your support. Take care and see you guys tomorrow.